My name is Zoraida Valdez, 32 years old. The Denver conference had ended sooner than expected, and my flight home landed just after sunset. The cab ride from the airport felt endless, the driver's radio humming low, while my mind wandered to the small, ordinary details I thought I was returning to. Takeout boxes from the Thai place he loved, a movie on the couch, maybe even one of those rare conversations where he still looked at me like I mattered. Instead, as the taxi turned onto our street, I froze. Cars crowded both curbs. Not just any cars. I recognized my mother's pale blue sedan, my father's weathered pickup, and, most damning of all, Lucy's silver SUV. My mother-in-law hadn't left the house in months unless something important demanded her presence. The cab slowed. Bright balloons bobbed in the front yard, pink, blue, and pastel yellow. A banner stretched across the porch rail, its block letters grinning at me. Welcome, our little miracle. The driver caught my wide eyes in the mirror. Looks like someone's celebrating, he said lightly. Yeah, I murmured, my throat tightening. Looks like it. I paid the fare with trembling hands. My suitcase wheels rattled against the pavement as I dragged them up the walkway. Laughter spilled from inside my house, bought with my salary, my overtime, my sacrifices. The porch smelled faintly of vanilla cake and coffee, a celebration scent. Through the window, I glimpsed shadows moving, heads thrown back in laughter. My chest hollowed as I stepped closer. Instinct screamed to turn back, go to a hotel, call him from somewhere safe. But something colder anchored my feet. If I left now, they would think I was weak. They would go on celebrating as if I didn't exist. I pressed the key into the lock, the familiar click louder than the music inside. When the door opened, the room fell into sharp focus. Streamers draped from the ceiling. The coffee table overflowed with wrapped gifts and soft pastels. Women leaned close, cooing over tiny socks and bottles. And at the center, seated in my favorite armchair, the one I had saved for months to buy, was Rosemary, my best friend since college. She glowed in a flowing maternity dress that showed a belly at least 7 months along. Beside her, kneeling with a smile so tender it felt like a knife to my chest, was my husband, Adrian. His hand rested protectively on her stomach. His face lit up as he helped her unwrap a package, the same expression he once reserved only for me. I stood in the doorway, invisible, as if I were a stranger crashing someone else's joy. For a fleeting second, no one noticed. Then Rosemary looked up. Her face blanched, the color draining as the onesie slipped from her hands. "Zoraida," she whispered. The room froze. Heads turned. My mother's smile crumpled. My father's jaw worked soundlessly. Lucy, the ever-watchful mother-in-law, met my gaze with something chillingly close to defiance. But it was Adrian's reaction that shattered me most. He didn't scramble up in guilt. He didn't remove his hand from Rosemary's belly. He didn't even flinch. He just looked annoyed. "You weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow," he said flatly, as if I were the one intruding. My voice came out a rasp. "Surprise!" A silence thick enough to choke on filled the room. No one moved. No one apologized. It was as if they had rehearsed this moment and I'd ruined their timing. Finally, my mother cleared her throat. "Sweetheart, maybe you should sit down. We can explain." Explain? The word ripped out of me. Explain how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working 60-hour weeks to keep a roof over our heads? Rosemary tried to stand, wobbling with one hand on her back. "Zoraida, please, it's not what you think." I laughed, harsh and sharp. The sound of something breaking. "Not what I think? You're 7 months pregnant, Rose. Do you want to tell me how that's not what I think?" Adrian rose at last, but not toward me. He positioned himself in front of Rosemary, shielding her from me in my own home. "Zoraida, you need to calm down. This isn't good for the baby." "The baby?" My disbelief nearly buckled my knees. "What about your wife? What about me?" His tone was patronizing, practiced. Things between us haven't been good for a long time. We both know that. Rose and I, we have something real, something we lost. Rose. My voice cracked on the pet name, the one I had used for her since college, now repurposed like every piece of my life. Around me, faces avoided mine. My father stared at the carpet. My mother wrung her hands. Friends shifted uncomfortably. Not one pair of eyes met mine with loyalty. "How long?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Rosemary faltered. Adrian glanced at her, then answered, "A year. A year." My body went cold. A year of lies while I covered every bill, cooked every meal, believed every excuse about networking events and interviews. A year where everyone in this room nodded along, keeping their smiles neat while I drowned in ignorance. My mother reached for me. "Sweetheart, we thought it was better." "Better?" I snapped. "Better to let me live a lie? Better to let me support a man who was building a family with someone else in secret?" Lucy finally spoke, her voice steady. "Zoraida, they're in love, real love. And now they're having a baby. That child deserves a family." The word family cut deeper than any knife. My chest rose and fell, rage clawing for release. Adrian's eyes hardened. "Zoraida, you're being dramatic. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened." I studied them all. My parents, my in-laws, my so-called friends, people I'd hosted, cared for, defended. They looked back at me as if I were the intruder, as if my pain was less important than the fragile bubble of their celebration. I straightened, the weight of betrayal pressing into something harder, colder inside me. "You think you've won something here?" My voice was calm now, even as my heart pounded. "You think this is about a baby or about love?" Adrian's brows drew together. "What are you talking about?" I let my gaze sweep the room, memorizing every face, every silence that had betrayed me. "You have no idea what you've just set in motion." I turned, heels striking the floor like gunfire, and walked out into the night air. The door shut behind me with finality, muffling the stunned voices calling my name. On the porch, the banner flapped in the wind, letters grinning at me like a cruel joke. My suitcase still sat on the step. I lifted the handle, squared my shoulders, and whispered to myself, "This is where it ends, and where something new begins." The Marriott downtown wasn't glamorous, but it had what I needed, anonymity. The lobby smelled faintly of citrus polish and stale coffee. I paid in cash, sliding bills across the counter with hands steadier than I expected. The clerk barely looked at me. Perfect. Inside my room, the air conditioner hummed a flat note while I dropped my suitcase against the wall. For the first time since stepping into that nightmare of a party, silence surrounded me. No laughter, no baby shower streamers, no pitying glances, just the pulse of my own breathing. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, staring at the floral print curtains. The image of Adrian's hand curved over Rosemary's belly replayed in my head like a reel I couldn't pause. That smile, his smile, aimed at her instead of me. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Texts stacked up one after another. "Mom, sweetheart, please come back. We can talk." Adrian, "Zoraida, you're overreacting. Come home." Rosemary, "I never wanted you to find out this way. Please, let's talk." I set the phone face down. I'd wasted enough breath on all of them. I turned on the desk lamp, pulled my laptop from my bag, and opened it. The glow lit up the room, pale blue against the wallpaper. Strategy over sorrow. That would be my survival. First call, James Walker, the real estate lawyer who'd impressed me years ago with his precision and lack of sentimentality. My fingers trembled only once as I dialed. "Walker Law Offices," came the clipped voice. "Mr. Walker, this is Zoraida Valdez. You handled my house purchase 3 years ago." My voice was calm, colder than I felt. "I need a divorce, fast." There was a pause. "It's after 9, Ms. Valdez. Are you certain this can't wait?" My husband has been having an affair with my best friend. She's 7 months pregnant with his child. Tonight, I walked into a baby shower hosted in my own house. Everyone knew. I didn't. Do you still think it can wait? His inhale was sharp. "Bring me every financial document you have. We'll meet tomorrow morning." "Saturday?" "Yes, but don't confront him tonight. Don't move money. Don't—" "I already started," I cut in. Another pause, longer. "Then finish, cleanly, and bring the receipts." I hung up before he could scold me further. I logged into our joint account. My hands flew over the keyboard, fueled by caffeine and fury. $14,700 sat in the account. With a few clicks, I transferred every cent into my personal savings, legally mine, earned by me. Next, credit cards. Automated voice lines, account numbers rattled off like incantations. One by one, I canceled them. Every card was in my name anyway, since Adrian's credit was abysmal. By the time I reached the mortgage company's automated menu, my third cup of hotel coffee sat empty beside me. I added a note, all communications to my office address only, automatic payments suspended. If Adrian thought the roof over his new family's head was secure, he he was about to learn otherwise. The phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail. I almost ignored it, then saw the name, Aunt Gina. Her voice cracked with static. Baby girl, I don't know what's happening, but I've got a bad feeling. Call me, please. I pressed the phone to my chest, closing my eyes. Gina, the only relative who'd ever told me the truth, even when it hurt. She'd warned me years ago that Rosemary had a competitive streak I underestimated. I'd laughed it off. Foolish. I didn't call back. Not yet. But I saved the message. Midnight stretched long. I should have been curled up beside Adrian, maybe planning our weekend. Instead, I scrawled notes across a yellow legal pad. Assets, accounts, retirement, insurance beneficiaries. Every thread of my life where his name appeared would be severed. Memory intruded, uninvited. The first time Rosemary showed up at our door unannounced with takeout because Adrian looked lonely while you were traveling. The night Adrian got drunk after his layoff and muttered, "You think you're better than me because you earn more?" My mother's dismissive laugh when I complained, "He's a man, honey. Let him have his pride." Red flags. All of them. Waved right in my face, and I had folded them away, telling myself love was stronger. The laptop screen dimmed, pulling me back to the present. My eyes burned, but clarity burned hotter. By dawn, the city outside was stirring, horns echoing up to my window. I stared at the pale light creeping over the skyline and whispered to the empty room, "Let's see who you are without me." The phone vibrated again, one last incoming text from Adrian. "Adrian, we'll figure this out. Don't do anything rash. Think about the baby." I typed a reply, stared at it, then deleted it unsent. Instead, I packed my folder of documents, zipped my suitcase, and prepared to walk into Walker's office like a woman who had lost everything, but was about to rebuild stronger. Because if they thought I would crumble, they didn't know me at all. Saturday morning, Walker's office smelled of burnt coffee and polished wood. The blinds were half drawn against the pale winter sun, leaving stripes of light across the conference table. I slid the thick folder of documents toward him. "You've been busy," he said, flipping through statements, deeds, and my scrawled notes. "I told you," I replied, steady but hollow. "I don't waste time." His brow lifted as he skimmed. Joint account drained. Credit cards canceled. Mortgage payments suspended. "Ms. Valdez, you've already built the skeleton of your case." "Good," I said. "Now put flesh on it." By Monday, the wheels were in motion. I marched into HR with my chin high, voice calm, as I asked Sandra to update my emergency contacts and beneficiaries. "Remove Adrian from everything," I told her. She hesitated, searching my face, but complied without a word. An hour later, I called the insurance company. "No, he is not authorized anymore. Remove him from my plan." With each severed tie, I felt lighter, as if cutting invisible threads that had been strangling me. But Adrian noticed quickly. By Wednesday, security phoned from the lobby. "Ms. Valdez, there's a man here demanding to see you. Says he's your husband." "Escort him out," I said. "And if he returns, call the police." The next day, the papers were served. James Walker's assistant called mid-morning. He seemed shocked, kept saying there had to be some mistake. Mistake? I almost laughed. The only mistake was trusting him. That afternoon, my phone rang off the hook. "Mom, sweetheart, please, this isn't the way. You'll regret it." "Dad, think about the family, Zoraida. Don't make this harder than it already is." "Lucy, you're acting vindictive. That baby needs stability. Don't you want to show some grace?" Each call chipped away at me, not because I believed them, but because I realized their loyalties had never truly been mine. Late that night, my mother called again. Her voice trembled. "We didn't want to hurt you. That's why no one told you." "You didn't want to hurt me?" My voice cracked like glass. "So you threw me into a room full of lies instead? That's love?" "Zoraida." I hung up. By Friday, Rosemary texted, "Please don't hate me. It wasn't supposed to happen. We can still be friends. The baby will need you." The audacity nearly made me drop my phone. Friends? She thought betrayal could be patched with baby photos and coffee dates? No, that bridge was ash. Meanwhile, James pressed forward. "We'll need to think about the house," he said. "It's in your name, correct?" "Yes." "Then you hold the cards." Cards. It did feel like a game now, except I was done playing by their rules. Saturday morning, I stood outside with a realtor, clipboard in her hand. "Market's good," she chirped. "If you want a quick sale, we can price it aggressively and get offers in days." "Do it," I said. "The sooner the better." From the sidewalk, the house looked almost innocent. White shutters, tidy porch, roses still clinging to life against the frost. But inside, every corner had been poisoned by memory. Rosemary in my chair, Adrian's hand on her belly, my mother's silence. Selling it wasn't just practical, it was survival. When Adrian called that evening, his voice cracked with panic. "You can't sell the house, Zoraida." "I can, and I am. Where am I supposed to live?" "That's not my problem anymore." "You're cruel," he spat. I nearly laughed. Cruel? Cruel is cheating on your wife with her best friend. Cruel is celebrating it in the house she paid for while pretending she doesn't exist. He went quiet, then whispered, "I loved you once." "Once," I repeated, tasting the bitterness. But not enough. I hung up before his silence could seep into me. That night, lying in my hotel bed, I stared at the ceiling. My phone glowed beside me with missed calls, voicemails, pleas stacked like sandbags against a storm. "But storms don't stop because you beg them to." "They move, they strip, they destroy." And I was about to show them all how destructive I could be. Because love might have kept me tethered, but betrayal had cut the rope. The realtor's paperwork waited on my desk. All it needed was my signature. I uncapped the pen and signed. The realtor's heels clicked across my hardwood floors, the sound sharp in the hollow house. Streamers from the baby shower still clung stubbornly to the corners of the ceiling, pastel ribbons dangling like ghosts of laughter. She scribbled notes on her clipboard while I drifted from room to room, touching the walls as though they belonged to someone else. "This place has good bones," she said cheerfully. "Bright windows, solid structure. Families will line up for it." Families. I swallowed hard. Once, this house was supposed to hold mine. In the living room, the faint indentation of Rosemary's body still marked my armchair cushion. I remembered how proud I'd been when I bought it after months of saving. It had been my sanctuary after long workdays, a little corner that was mine, and yet she had made it hers, without permission, without shame. I trailed my fingers across the mantel where photographs had once stood. Adrian's graduation picture, my parents smiling at Christmas, a snapshot of Rosemary and me, younger, laughing in matching scarves. I'd boxed them up last week and shoved them into storage, but their absence was almost worse than their presence, like missing teeth in a once-perfect smile. "Price it for a quick sale," I told the realtor. "I don't care about top dollar, I just want it gone." She nodded briskly. "Understood. We'll have it listed by Tuesday." When she left, I lingered alone, letting the silence press in. Each room bled memories. Adrian painting the kitchen cabinets while I made jokes about his uneven brushstrokes. Sunday mornings when we ate pancakes in pajamas. Late nights when he whispered promises into the dark. All of it curdled now, tainted by betrayal. My phone rang. Mother. Again. I almost declined, but curiosity gnawed at me. "Zoraida," she said, voice shaky. "Please stop this madness. Adrian is falling apart. He hasn't eaten in days." "Good," I said before I could stop myself. "That's a terrible thing to say." "Terrible?" My grip on the phone tightened. "What's terrible is you standing in my kitchen clapping for a baby shower while knowing the truth. What's terrible is watching your daughter walk into humiliation and doing nothing." Her breath hitched. We thought if it came from them, it would be gentler." "Gentler? You call that gentle?" My voice rose, echoing off the empty walls. "You let me work myself to exhaustion to keep this house while he built another life behind my back. You chose their comfort over my dignity." Silence, then softly, "We didn't choose sides." "You absolutely did." My throat burned. "You chose everyone but me." I ended the call. For a long moment, I leaned against the wall, pressing my forehead to the cool plaster. My pulse pounded like a war drum. When the phone rang again, it was Adrian. "You can't do this," he said the second I answered. His voice carried a raw edge I barely recognized. "You can't sell the house. Where am I supposed to live?" "You have Rosemary," I said flatly. "She's with her parents. They don't want me there." "Not my problem." "Zoraida, please, you're being cruel." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Cruel? You don't know the meaning of cruel. Cruel is telling your wife she's dramatic while you cradle another woman's stomach. Cruel is making me the fool in my own home." He inhaled shakily. "I never wanted it to happen this way." "But it did, and you let it." "I loved you once," he whispered. "Once," I echoed, each syllable sharp as glass. But not enough to stop. I hung up. The house seemed to exhale with me, a long, tired sigh through its vents. The air was thick with the lemon-scented cleaner I'd used earlier, but beneath it lingered another odor, the faint sweetness of cake, the musk of too many bodies crowded together, celebrating my humiliation. That night, I walked through each room slowly, like a mourner saying goodbye at a wake. In the guest room, I remembered laughing with Rosemary during sleepovers, whispering secrets until dawn. In the study, I saw Adrian hunched over job applications, his pride brittle as glass. In the bedroom, I stared at the indentation his body had left on the mattress, a hollow beside mine. A war raged inside me. One voice hissed, "This house is yours. Don't give it up. Make them leave." Another, calmer, steadier, answered, "These walls are poisoned. Freedom lies in walking away." When I returned to the living room, the realtor's folder lay on the table. I opened it, staring at the contract. My signature looked foreign beneath the ink, a slash across the page. A knock startled me. I froze. Through the window, I saw Adrian standing on the porch, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. For a long moment, I considered opening the door. Then I turned off the light and let him knock in vain. The next morning, the realtor called. "We already have interest. Someone wants to view it tomorrow." "Schedule it," I said. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Unknown, Zoraida. It's urgent. Please call me." I stared at the screen, pulse quickening. "Rosemary." The unknown text pulsed at the top of my screen like a warning light. "Zoraida, it's urgent. Please call me." I stared at it in the dim kitchen, the realtor's folder still open on the table, the house too quiet around me. Rosemary? It felt like her cadence, needy, breathless, the word urgent doing the heavy lifting. I set the phone down without replying. If it was her, she could sit with the discomfort. I'd had enough of swallowing it for everyone. A minute later, the phone lit again, this time an unfamiliar number calling. I almost let it go to voicemail, then swiped. "Hello? Zoraida? It's Maria." A voice from another life, one of Adrian's old colleagues, the kind person who brought store-bought cupcakes to office birthdays and rolled her eyes at tyrant bosses. "I'm so sorry to call out of nowhere. I wasn't sure if you'd pick up." My body loosened a notch. "Hey, Maria. I heard rumors and... Listen, I was on an interview panel yesterday. Adrian applied. He looked... bad." She hesitated, softening her tone. When we asked about his employment gap, he got defensive. He started talking about how his vindictive ex ruined his life. A sorry little laugh. It didn't go over well. My jaw tightened. He said that in an interview? Worse. HR verified with his old manager. He wasn't laid off. He was let go for performance. He'd told us it was downsizing. Another pause. And look, I'm not gossiping. I'm worried. He smelled like he was covering something, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. I don't think he's okay. I braced an elbow on the counter. "Thank you for telling me." "I didn't know if I should," she added quickly. "You don't owe him anything. I just thought you'd want the truth." "I do. I meant it. Take care, Maria." When I hung up, the kitchen clock sounded suddenly loud. Tick, 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 like a countdown I couldn't see. I pictured Adrian in a fluorescent-lit conference room, tearing down the last remnants of his own prospects and blaming me for the rubble. The smallest, cruelest part of me felt vindicated. Another part, older, softer, wanted to remember the version of him who put flowers in a chipped glass on our breakfast table after my promotions. I poured water into a glass and watched the stream until the sink hissed quiet. The phone buzzed again. "Unknown. Please. It's important." I didn't answer. The next 2 days blurred into errands and signatures. The realtor texted photos of the house staged brighter than I'd ever seen it. Lemons piled in a white bowl, a throw blanket folded with military precision, the armchair, my armchair, turned at a pleasing angle that denied its history. "Open house went well," she chirped by phone. "Multiple offers expected." By Monday morning, James Walker called. "We've calendared the preliminary hearing. Opposing party has 30 days to respond." Opposing party. I repeated the clinical phrase like a charm against pain. "Does he have counsel?" "Not yet. If he doesn't retain someone, the court will appoint." His tone softened a fraction. "We'll keep momentum." Momentum. I clung to that word like a rope through smoke. At lunch, I sat in my car outside a cafe, scrolling through my notes. Beneficiaries changed, accounts secured, house listing roaring forward. I had made a life out of taking care of things. It felt like the only antidote to humiliation, competence sharpened to a blade. The phone rang, unknown again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Zoraida?" The voice was raw, thinned by panic. "It's Rosemary." I closed my eyes. "What do you want?" "I'm at the hospital." Her breathing hitched. "I went into early labor. They're monitoring me. They think it's stress-induced. It's happening fast. I've been calling Adrian. He won't pick up. My grip on the steering wheel whitened. And you think I can do what, exactly? I don't know. She choked on a breath. He said he had interviews out of town. 3 days. He promised he'd be back. My mom drove me. A sob snapped the sentence. I'm scared. The image rose uninvited. Sterile hallways. Monitors beeping. A small life not asking to be an emblem for anyone's betrayal. I bit down on mercy until it tasted like iron. You don't get to call me for support, I said, steady as winter. You don't get to make me your safety net. I know, her words tumbled. But I don't have anyone else to... You had me, I said, the old ache flaring. You chose him. You chose this. Live with it. The silence stretched, then a whisper. We never meant to hurt you. You did, I said, and now we live with it. I hung up. The windshield was a clean rectangle of daylight. People carried to-go bags past the cafe. A teenager in a bright jacket laughed at something on his phone. The world continued, indifferent, relentless, ordinary. I pressed my palms against my eyes until stars pinwheeled behind my lids. When the spots cleared, I felt both lighter and heavier, as if I'd exhaled a ghost and inhaled a stone. Oh. That evening, I met Aunt Gina at a diner off the interstate, lemon pie under a plastic dome by the register, the air smelling like coffee and fry oil. She squeezed me tight before we sat. You look 10 pounds lighter, she said, scrutinizing my face. I signed the listing papers. Court date set. I toyed with the edge of my napkin. He tanked an interview and blamed me. Maria called. Of course he did. Gina sighed, stirring sugar into her mug. People who won't face themselves always pick nearest targets. I told her about Rosemary's call, how I'd said no. Guilt flickered across the table like heat mirage. Gina's gaze was level. Baby girl, you didn't throw her into this. And you sure didn't pack her an overnight bag. She softened. But I know you. You'll think about that baby. I already am, I admitted. I can hold two truths, that he's innocent and that I owe them nothing. She touched my knuckles. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. We sat in a quiet that felt almost gentle. Outside, trucks rolled by with their own private missions. Inside, our waitress refilled coffee without fuss. Ordinary mercy. On my drive back to the hotel, the city was awash of taillights. I rolled down the window, the cold air bracing as a vow. Somewhere in that sprawl, Adrian was digging his own pit. For years, I'd built ramps and handrails and safety rails. Not anymore. The next morning, James called early. Service confirmed. He accepted the packet. No counsel yet. Papers rustled. I'll be candid. If he keeps missing interviews and spouting grievances, he's walking straight toward a court-appointed situation. Good, I said, because it required fewer syllables than the complicated truth. Also, he added, your realtor emailed an offer. Fast close. Full ask. I closed my eyes. The word free sat in my chest, small and bright as a coal. At lunch, Sandra from HR knocked on my office doorway. Do you have a minute? I gestured her in. She perched on the edge of the chair. I know it's not my business. I just want you to know if you need extra time off or flexibility. She lifted her hands. We've got you. My throat tightened unexpectedly. The kindness of practical people has always undone me more than grand speeches. Thank you, I said, meaning it. When she left, I stared at the frame photo on my bookshelf. Aunt Gina and me at a county fair, powdered sugar on our cheeks from funnel cake. No Adrian, no Rosemary. It looked like a life I could step into without tripping over a lie. The day staggered toward evening. I worked late because work was the one arena where the rules were clear and results followed effort. When I finally powered down my computer, the office lights clicked off in sequence, a gentle domino of night. In the lobby, my phone vibrated with a voicemail transcription from James. Prelim hearing set. Expect minimal pushback if he doesn't retain counsel. Another ping followed from the realtor. Offer accepted. Closing in 3 weeks. I stood in the revolving door's glass crescent and watched my reflection. Segment and reassemble, until it annoyed me enough to step out into the cold. On the sidewalk, headlights flared and faded. I tucked my chin into my scarf and started walking. The night air made my lungs sting in the way that feels like truth. Clean, undeniable, almost medicinal. At the corner, my phone buzzed again. Mom, please don't do this today. The baby. I stopped under the street lamp, the text haloed like an accusation. The old script tried to run. Be the good daughter, carry the extra weight, make it easier for everyone else, diminish so others can expand. But another, newer script held steady. You don't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. I turned the screen face down and kept walking. The courthouse smelled of disinfectant and damp paper. Its marble floors echoed each step I took, heels clicking a rhythm that felt too loud for the hush of the hall. I clutched the folder James had prepped for me. Financial statements, signed affidavits, house sale contracts, every piece of my life distilled into documents. James walked beside me, calm in his tailored suit. Stay steady, he murmured. Judges appreciate clarity, not drama. I'm not here to perform, I said, though the tremor in my hands betrayed me. Exactly. He gave the faintest smile. Then you'll do fine. Inside the courtroom, fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flattening everything into dull beige. I sat at the petitioner's table, heart pounding against my ribs. The chair across from me remained empty. The bailiff called this case, Valdez versus Valdez. The judge adjusted her glasses. Respondent not present? A court-appointed lawyer shuffled forward, files clutched tight. Your Honor, Mr. Valdez is absent due to a family emergency. His newborn son is in the NICU with complications from premature birth. A flicker passed through the room. My throat tightened, but I kept my gaze forward. Not sympathy, not relief, just wait. The lawyer continued. Mr. Valdez is also currently admitted for treatment regarding alcohol dependency. He requests continuance. James rose. Your Honor, while we acknowledge the unfortunate circumstances, Ms. Valdez has acted swiftly and transparently. Assets are solely in her name. The marital contribution imbalance is significant. We request the court proceed with dissolution today. The judge studied us both, then leaned forward. Ms. Valdez, do you understand that if I grant this petition today, the settlement is final? No alimony, no claims against your assets? Yes, Your Honor. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I understand, and I accept. She shuffled the papers, her pen scratching across the final page. The sound was louder than my heartbeat. Then this court grants the dissolution of marriage between Zoraida Valdez and Adrian Valdez, effective immediately. The gavel struck once, crisp as bone-breaking. Just like that, my marriage ended. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath for weeks. James leaned closer, whispering, It's done. I nodded, but a swirl of emotions tangled inside me. Relief braided with grief, freedom threaded with fatigue. The word NICU replayed in my mind, each syllable sharp as a nail. A child struggling for breath while his father drowned himself elsewhere. That child was innocent. That child hadn't asked to be a pawn. But he wasn't mine to save. Outside, the winter air slapped cold against my cheeks. I paused on the courthouse steps, looking down at the city street stretched like a map before me. Cars rushed by. Strangers carried coffee cups. A bus hissed to a stop. The world spun on, indifferent to the collapse of one woman's vows. James adjusted his scarf. What's next for you? I have a promotion waiting, I said. Seattle office, senior vice president. His brows lifted. Congratulations. It means leaving all this behind. I let the words hang, tasting their weight. And that's what I want. We walked toward the curb, each of us with our own silence. I thought about Aunt Gina, how she would clap her hands and say, finally, baby girl, finally. I thought about my mother, who would probably call tonight with another plea wrapped in guilt. I thought about Adrian, broken, absent, tethered to a hospital crib he hadn't earned. For a moment, I imagined what he might say if he were here. We can fix this, Zoraida. Don't walk away. Think about the baby. But his seat had been empty, his life too tangled in consequences. A taxi slowed at the curb. James held the door. Seattle will suit you. I slipped inside, the folder still in my lap, my pulse slowing to something steadier. As the cab pulled into traffic, I whispered to the glass, yes, it will. Seattle welcomed me with gray skies and air salted from the sound. From my corner office, I could see ferries cut white lines across the water, their horns echoing through the city. The desk was mine, oak, solid, positioned by the window, and for the first time in years, no one could take it away. I threw myself into work, where the rules made sense. Effort equaled results. No one whispered betrayals behind conference room doors. Instead, I earned the promotion I'd clawed toward, senior vice president, the kind of title Adrian once teased me about chasing like a mirage. Only now, the mirage was real, concrete, written on the door in etched glass. But at night, when the city lights blinked on like stars too close to touch, memories sometimes slipped in. The baby shower banner, Rosemary's pale face, Adrian's bored annoyance when I appeared. I would shut the curtains and remind myself, that life is gone. This one is mine. Aunt Gina visited often, making the 2-hour drive from Portland in her sensible sedan. She'd sit on my balcony with a cigarette she never lit, just held for the ritual of it, while we sipped coffee. "You're glowing, baby girl," she said once, eyes squinting against the drizzle. "I'm surviving." "Surviving isn't glowing. You're building." She tapped the unlit cigarette on the railing. "You know, after my second husband cheated, I tried to patch it up. Spent years patching, sewing scraps of trust that never held. By the time I left, I didn't know who I was anymore." I looked at her profile, lines carved deep by time and mistakes. "And now?" "Now I know boundaries. Too late for me, maybe. Not too late for you." She smiled sideways. "Learn faster than I did." Her words settled like stones, grounding me. One rainy evening, she brought news. We were eating clam chowder at a harbor cafe, windows streaked with water. "Your mother called me," Gina said, almost casually. I bristled. "And?" "She wanted me to pass something on. Apparently Rosemary confessed. Told them she pursued Adrian. Showed up with dinners when you traveled. Offered to help with job applications. Said she'd been drawn to him since college, just waited for her chance." The spoon slipped from my hand, clattering against the bowl. She admitted that? Worse. She lied about the timeline. Said it started almost 2 years ago, right after he lost his job. 2 years. My pulse roared in my ears. That meant every holiday, every anniversary, every late night at the office, while I believed I was saving us, she was already there, taking what was mine. Gina reached across the table, steadying my trembling hands. "You hear me? This wasn't weakness in you. This was ambition in her." I swallowed hard. "And Adrian?" "In and out of rehab 3 times since the baby was born. Last month, Rosemary filed a restraining order. Said he got violent when drinking." My chest hollowed. "So he's homeless, far as anyone knows? Shelters, cars, wherever he can land?" The chowder turned to paste in my mouth. I should have felt triumph. Justice served. Karma swift. Instead, emptiness spread through me. "What about the baby?" I asked quietly. "Healthy now. Rosemary's back with her parents. Miserable, your mother said. But the child's okay." Good, I thought, though the word felt brittle. That night, back in my apartment, I stood by the window, watching ferries drift across the black water. My reflection in the glass looked older, sharper. I whispered to it, "You don't need him to suffer for you to be free." It was true. For months, I'd fed on the thought of his downfall like it was oxygen. But standing there, alone in a city that had no memory of him, I realized my happiness couldn't depend on his misery. That was still letting him shape my life. In the weeks that followed, I leaned into the ordinary joys. Morning coffee at a Capitol Hill cafe, where the barista learned my name. Runs along the waterfront, rain slicking my hair to my face. Weekly calls with Gina, where we laughed more than we mourned. Work thrived. My team trusted me, respected me. No whispers of betrayal, just deadlines and deliverables. It was the kind of normal I once thought impossible. And yet, when an invitation for a Chicago conference landed in my inbox, my stomach knotted. I told myself I wouldn't go. Too risky, too many ghosts. But the promotion required it, and I wasn't about to dim my shine for fear of shadows. The flight felt like flying backward through time. When the plane descended over the familiar grid of streets, my chest tightened. The city looked unchanged, but I was not. As the cab pulled up to the hotel downtown, I whispered to my reflection in the window, "You're not here for him. You're here for you." Still, as I stepped onto the Chicago sidewalk, suitcase trailing behind, I felt the city's pull, the way history can feel like quicksand. I promised myself one thing: I would not seek him out. If fate wanted to cross our paths, it would have to drag us both into the same frame. At the crosswalk, the light flipped to walk. I stepped forward, into the city I once called home. Chicago's night air was sharper than I remembered. Diesel fumes, tangled with roasted coffee drifting from the corner Starbucks. The conference had ended late, panels and handshakes blending into one blur of polite faces. I pulled my coat tighter and stepped out of the hotel lobby, my suitcase wheels thudding softly against the curb. And then I saw him. At first, I thought it was a stranger hunched on the bench outside the cafe, head bowed, hands wrapped around a paper cup, but when he shifted under the sodium lamp, the shape of his profile slammed into me. Thinner, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, collar stained, but undeniably Adrian. My heart stuttered. For a split second, instinct screamed, "Turn, vanish, let him fade into the city." Yet my feet betrayed me, carrying me across the street as traffic hissed by. Adrian. His head lifted slowly, as if it cost him something. His eyes found me, and in them I watched a storm pass. Surprise, shame, hope, despair. Then, resignation. "Zoraida," he said, my name a rasp. "You look amazing." I stood a careful distance away, clutching my suitcase handle. "And you look," I trailed off, unwilling to hand him pity. "Ruined." His laugh was brittle. "Yeah, success suits you. I should have worn it better." For a moment, silence pressed between us, broken only by the rattle of the cafe door as customers came and went. "I heard about the baby," I said finally. "Congratulations." He barked a laugh that held no joy. "Congratulations. I haven't seen him in 2 months. Rosemary won't let me near him. Maybe that's for the best." He took a sip, hands shaking around the cup. "I messed up everything, didn't I?" "Yes." The word left me like an exhale. "You did." He scrubbed a hand over his face. "I thought the grass was greener, that I could start over with someone who didn't know what a failure I was." His eyes flicked to me. "You never saw me that way, but I felt it." "I never thought you were a failure," I said, low. "But I did, living off your money, your drive. I was a passenger in my own life, Zoraida." Then Rose looked at me like I was a prize instead of a burden. His shoulders slumped. Turns out the prize wasn't worth what I paid for it. Wind tugged at my scarf. I studied him. The hollow cheeks, the twitch in his jaw, the smell of stale alcohol woven with cigarette smoke. No charm, no excuses. Just a man stripped bare by his own choices. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know it doesn't mean much now, but I am." I searched his face for manipulation, for the sly tilt of charm he'd once wielded like a weapon. None. Only exhaustion, the hollow honesty of someone who no longer had anything left to sell. "What happened to you?" I asked. "The drinking?" "Started after you left. Couldn't deal with the guilt. Couldn't deal with the silence. Couldn't deal with the fact that I'd thrown away the best thing I had. For nothing." His voice cracked. "She never loved me. Not really. She loved winning. Loved taking something that wasn't hers. But love? No." I thought of Gina's words, of Rosemary admitting her pursuit, of the timeline stretched back farther than I'd known. 2 years of lies. 2 years stolen. "She admitted it," I told him quietly. "She went after you. She lied about when it started." He gave a hollow laugh. "Took her long enough to say it out loud. I always knew." He rubbed his temple. "The worst part? I knew you were the better woman. I always knew. Loyal, honest, relentless. And I still..." His voice dropped. "I still chose selfishness." For a heartbeat, tears burned my eyes. I blinked them back. "What are you going to do now?" I asked. He shrugged, a movement so small it was nearly invisible. "Try to get sober again. Try to find a job that doesn't ask for references. Try to be a father to a son I can't even see. You could leave, start over somewhere else." "With what money? I can barely afford this coffee." He lifted the paper cup with a shaky hand. Without thinking, I reached into my purse and pulled out the cash I had. $60. I held it out. He recoiled. "I can't take that." "It's not charity, it's closure." "Closure," he echoed, staring at the bills like they might bite. "You apologized. I believe you mean it. This..." I pressed the money into his hand. "This is the ending our marriage should have had. Civil, honest, human." His fingers closed around the cash. His eyes glistened. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," I said, rising. "Just try to be better, for your son, if not for yourself." I turned to leave, suitcase wheels scraping against the concrete. "Zoraida," he called softly. I looked back. "You were right to leave me. You were right about everything." I met his gaze one last time. "I know." Then I walked back across the street, the city lights washing over me, the night air colder, but somehow clearer. By the time I reached my hotel room, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Call me when you land, please." I stared at it, thumb hovering. Then I set the phone face down on the nightstand and let the darkness fold around me. The plane lifted from O'Hare the next morning, the city shrinking beneath a veil of cloud. I sat by the window, forehead against the cool glass, watching Chicago dissolve into distance. A chapter closed, finally sealed. Seattle greeted me with a clean slice of sunlight through the rain clouds. My apartment smelled faintly of cedar from the candle I'd left burning last week. I set my suitcase by the door, dropped my coat on the hook, and breathed deep. Home. Mine. Untainted. For the first time since the baby shower, I felt peace stretch inside me like new muscle. Seeing Adrian broken on that bench hadn't sparked triumph. It had sparked something quieter, heavier. I realized I didn't need him to suffer for me to be happy. His downfall wasn't my freedom. My freedom was mine alone to claim. That night my phone rang. Mom. I almost ignored it, but curiosity, or maybe mercy, made me swipe. Her voice was tentative. Zoraida, I heard you saw him. I did. How are you feeling? I thought carefully. Sad for him, grateful for me, ready to move on. There was a pause. Then softly, I owe you an apology, a real one. Not for him, that's between you and him, but for not telling you. For protecting him instead of you, for making you feel your anger was wrong. The words sank into me like rain on parched earth. Thank you, I said. You're my daughter. I should have been on your side from the beginning. Yes, you should have. Can you forgive me? Forgiveness. I thought about it as I walked to the window, the city stretching wide with lights. Could I forgive without pretending the wound hadn't scarred? I can forgive you, I said finally. But things are different now. I'm different now. I won't pretend what happened didn't matter, and I won't go back to the way things were before. I understand, she whispered. I'm proud of you, Zoraida. I didn't say it then, but I am. After we hung up, I stayed by the window, watching ferries carve slow paths across the dark water. For most of my life, I thought strength meant endurance, bearing pain, swallowing disappointment, making excuses. Now I knew better. Strength was boundaries. Strength was refusing to accept less than I deserved. Strength was building a life where I didn't need anyone's permission to feel complete. Weeks turned to months. Work thrived. I bought a house on the hills above Seattle, glass windows that framed the Sound and the Olympic Mountains. On Saturdays, I hiked with David, an architect I'd started seeing. He was nothing like Adrian. Steady, respectful, secure in himself. When I told him my story, he didn't flinch or pity. He simply said, I'm sorry you went through that, and I'm grateful it led you here. I still lived alone, my space, my routine, my money. If I chose to share my life again, it would be an addition, not a necessity. Sometimes Aunt Gina visited from Portland, bringing her humor and her scars. We'd sit on my deck, sipping wine, laughing about how far we'd come. She'd nudge me and say, See, you learned faster than I did. Adrian faded into rumor. Gina mentioned once that he'd finally gotten sober, working shifts in a warehouse outside Chicago, seeing his son every other weekend. I didn't feel vindication. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. And that, more than anything, was freedom. Rosemary reached out once through social media. A long message full of apologies, justifications, pleas to rebuild our friendship. I deleted it without reading past the first line. Some bridges, once burned, stay ash. My parents and I spoke on holidays, cautious but civil. They asked about my life, careful never to advise or excuse. It wasn't closeness, it was honesty. That mattered more. One morning, standing in my new home office, sunlight flooding across the desk, I thought about the house in Chicago. It had sold to a young couple. I hoped they filled it with laughter untainted by secrets. I hoped they never learned the lessons I had, but if they did, I hoped they learned them as thoroughly. People sometimes asked if I regretted how I handled the divorce. Too harsh? Too fast? Should I have forgiven? Considered the baby? I answered simply, I spent years forgiving. Years carrying the weight of someone else's failures. Years sacrificing my joy for other people's comfort. I owed no one more. What I owed myself was respect, and I delivered. Sometimes they called it revenge. I called it justice, or better yet, self-respect in action. I didn't destroy Adrian's life. He did that himself. I simply stopped cushioning his fall. And in that choice, I found my rise. On my desk, my laptop pinged with a new notification. A message request. Rosemary again. I moved the cursor over the small X and clicked. Some stories don't need sequels. I leaned back, sunlight warm on my skin, mountains bright beyond the glass. For the first time in years, I felt entirely whole.